You know, the Biafra War broke out in 1967.
Yeah.
After the genocides of 1966. So by the time the war broke out in 1967, I was still in primary school, just about to round up primary school. And then schools were closed permanently in Biafra land. So we weren't going to school anymore. And I started school very early. Even my senior brothers and sisters, I finished primary school before them. So you might know that I was very young then.
Yeah.
Maybe around the age of 10 or thereabout. So when the war ended, I would still be around 12 or thereabout before I moved to the north.
And then you had to make the transition from what you knew, being a Christian in the Southeast, to now becoming a Muslim. And this is without parental, I guess they were not around when this stuff was happening, because you had to move from the East down to the North, right? So did you at any point give it much thought, or was this something that just happened automatically?
Well, nothing I did at that time was preempted by me. I mentioned Malam Oji, Malam Umori Oji Enweze, my uncle, in that book.
Yeah.
Around 1964, thereabout. I never knew him. One day around 1964, I saw a man clad in black from head to toe. Only the nose, the tip of the nose and the eyes were visible. He walked into our parlor in Amobia, and I became frightened. I rushed off, thinking that I had seen an apparition. Collided with my father in the process. When we entangled ourselves from the ground, my father calmed me down, told me that it's not an apparition, that the person I'm seeing is his relation, and that his name is Oji Enweze. But Oji at that time wasn't Oji anymore. He was answering Malam Umuru. I had become a Muslim, not just a Muslim, but an imam and also a herbalist. So that was my first experience with Islam. That happened around 1964 or thereabout. So later, Oji left Amobia. We didn't see him again. The next time we saw him was during the war. He suddenly appeared in the uniform of a regimental sergeant major of Nigeria, of the Biafra Army. Then after the war, when we came back home, Oji came. That was in 1970. Remember, we traveled from a Kuba in Ohaji, where we ran for our dear lives. We were camped in the forestry. That was the forestry ministry. They had farms there where they were producing food for the Biafran soldiers. So we were there. When the war ended, we trekked from there, from a Kuba to Owerri, from Owerri to Olu, from Olu till we reached Amobia. We traveled for 5 days. On the 6th day, we arrived at Amobia. When we arrived at Amobia, Amobia was in ruins, forests everywhere, no house. My father's house, for instance, was bombed, and the deep hole stood where the house used to be. So we lodged ourselves in the primary school, became refugees in our village. So food was scarce, life was really hard. It was in the midst of that Oji resurfaced again. And they have markets in Amobia and the environment that time were manned by Hausa people and Yorubas. So Oji now took me to Ikoka, to a friend of his, a Muslim friend, to help, to assist in running his shop. That was where my romance with Islam started.
Yeah.
So after some time, when the Igbos came back, they came back as Ndi Osafia, so to speak.
Yeah.
They were collecting goods from the Hausa and Yoruba traders and selling with the 20 pounds that the government gave them. So eventually, the Igbo people with their 20 pounds, they became so prosperous that the Hausa traders and Yoruba traders in the markets couldn't compete with them anymore. So the Hausas and Yorubas gradually left, and the Igbos took over. Nobody chased them anywhere.
Yeah.
But when they saw that they couldn't stand the competition, they gradually left. And when Malam Isa, that I was helping in his shop, was about to leave to go to the north, Oji, or Malam Umoru, advised me to go with him. That was in March 1970. The war ended in December or thereabout, January 1970,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
That was just around 3 months after the war ended. So I was full of adventure, and I decided to go with him to the north. My mother cried, people wailed, but I made up my mind. If Oji said it's a good thing, it should be a good thing. So that was how I went to the north. And I talked about our journey from Oka, where we entered the lorry. That time there were no comfortable means of transport. There were these kind of wooden trucks that you sit and you back the driver, and the truck would creak and groan and smoke. That was how we traveled from Oka to Enugu, passed the night in Enugu in a Hausa community, moved again, traveled to Otrukpo, passed the night again in a Hausa community in Otrukpo. Then we moved again from Otrukpo to Jos, passed the night in a Hausa community before we continued. Eventually we landed in Ankara, that is in Katsina State today, but then it was North Central State. So when we landed there, a few days after our landing, you know, when I was in Oka, I wasn't practicing Islam because I was brought up in a very, very, very good Christian family. We were so Christian that as a boy, starting from the age of 8 or thereabout, I would go to church in the morning and I wouldn't come home till evening, because after morning service, I would stay in the church and join to do the Sunday school. We were in the Anglican communion, and we were doing a Sunday school in the afternoon by 3. I would be loitering in the church compound till 3. I joined the Sunday school. After the Sunday school, I will join the youth fellowship and then the choir and then evening service and come back home in the night. So that was how deeply I was entrenched in our kind of Christianity at the time.
Yeah.
Before I went to the north. So a few days after we arrived, Malam Isa called me in the morning. He had 2 wives. We were living in a compound. He brought a kettle, took me to the bathroom. He told me to stoop down. I did. Poured water on my head and made some incantations and gave me the kettle to wash myself. That was how I became a Muslim. From a good Christian boy, I became a kettle-wielding Muslim. So then he took me up on Islamic studies. Every morning we will do a spell of study in the Zawre, that is the outer house in the compound. That was where he started to teach me these recitations, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and so on and so forth. So that was how my Islamic journey started. Not really because I decided it was the best thing to do, but because in my little infantile mind, anything the elder said made sense to me and I obeyed. So that was just how I became a Muslim.